Greetings and welcome back to Can We Really Talk?
We have appreciated the feedback we have received from people. Due to some of that feedback, we have shortened these episodes to about 30 minutes.
We also wanted to let you know that we will be holding more conversation on such topics as COVID, gender, race, and politics.
Please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel.
Now on to part 2 of community policing.
So there's this statement, Black Lives Matter. And there's an organization, Black Lives Matter. Just first thought, do you hold them as synonymous? If so, why? And if not, why not?
So yes and no, because Black Lives Matter actually came out of a love letter to Black people after the murder of Tamir Rice. And Alicia Garcia used it in that love letter. And then Patrisse Cullors used that as a hashtag. And prior to that, there was neither the phrase nor the organization. And so at the very core, they are one and the same. And then a grassroots movement became an organization. But at the very foundation, the phrase was born out of pain and out of love for people who for the past 400 plus years have not mattered. They have not mattered equally to people who look like me. And that's not a judgment, that's just a fact. And so do I hold them synonymously now? No, because the phrase has evolved and changed into a factual statement that Black lives do matter and an organization. So I don't know that it's something that I can separate to say an either or. I think it's a both and.
I think it can get really
Thank you, Ray.
confusing really quick. Black Lives Matter, the question, very different from Black Lives Matter, the hashtag, and some of the other things that get lumped onto that. And some of this is the human condition of lumping things together, and defund the police often lands with Black Lives Matter, often lands with ACAB, often lands with the only good cop's a dead cop. We're assuming a lot of things when we see those and what the sign holder means, but it also causes emotional turmoil for people who see those and maybe are offended by them. So my feeling is Black Lives Matter, the statement, and Black Lives Matter, the organization in February of 2021 are two different things.
To me, as I see it, I feel like the phrase and organization may have evolved from the same problem, the same pain, the same systemic discrimination against an entire community that unfortunately has been rooted in the very basis of this country. But I think they have at this point separated. The organization has become something more of a political movement. And the statement itself is a principle that should have been, it should have been taken for granted. It should have been, it shouldn't even have needed to be said. We needed to have it said. We needed to basically have it pushed in people's faces. It's kind of, it's a black mark on us as a society. A lot of people get offended by Black Lives Matter because they feel it maybe takes away from the importance of their own lives. Like, if Black Lives Matter, does that mean that mine don't? Again, we're going to this very strict entrenchment in a certain perspective on something. Whereas what it really is saying is, see us, hear us. We've not been treated equally, and we deserve to be treated equally. Our lives matter as much as yours, not instead of yours, not more than yours, but as much as yours. And this should be the goal as a society, that there is no other reasonable resolution than to have a situation where Black Lives Matter is as obvious as breathing in air to stay alive.
Wow.
Yeah, you know, I don't think that the statement and the organization are the same thing. I have my own issues with the organization and some of the ways that they nationally um, have conducted themselves, and I've also had some personal interaction with a chapter out of Sacramento that left me feeling very disheartened. Uh, so I have a lot of questions about how they operate. Of course, the statement "Black Lives Matter," uh, like Ehud was saying, kind of we shouldn't even have to say it. And the way that I relate to that question is just all the stuff that I see that has happened to my kids just living here in this community. It's clear to me that Black lives don't matter as much as people might say in public that they do. It's clear to me when I have, both my boys and my daughters, have had their struggles with racism in this community, and most of it coming, through their school age years. And when you have a son uh, who has come to you by the time he's in third grade, has come to you with various things like, his classmates saying, um, you can't trust Black people. These are like 6-year-olds, 7-year-olds. You can't trust Black people. They lie all the time. Where are they getting this? Well, obviously, this kind of thinking has been handed down. So by the time my son is in the third grade, he comes home bawling and says, "Dad, why do they hate us so much? If Black lives truly mattered, that would never happen." A third grade young Black boy would not be coming to his parents and bawling from his soul, saying, "Dad, why do they hate us so much?" And I had it coming from my eldest son as well at very young ages. So, yeah, the statement that Black Lives Matter, the fact that we have to make it is sad, but we do have to make it because it's a reality that we are not thought of as equals.
So I grew up in Nevada County. I moved here when we were 9. And when I started going to school, I was called the N-word almost every single day. I've been spit on. I've been pushed, shoved, told that I don't mean anything, that I was made to be beaten. And if I would go for help, a lot of people were like, "Oh, well, you really shouldn't have been there." I'm here. Where, what do you do with that as a child? What do you do with that as a child? And even as an adult, I had a run-in with a gentleman at a post office telling me that I was nothing but a Black bitch that smoked crack and sucked cock. So this is stuff that happened throughout my lifetime here in Nevada County. What's really interesting is that you hear a lot of people talk about Nevada County, a lot of locals, that, oh, this is a great and loving place. And when I say, hey, I grew up here and that is not necessarily the truth, they immediately deny what I went through here. Not that there's beautiful people here, don't get me wrong. But there also is a portion of this population here that's very vocal in telling me that I do not matter. I had issues even wanting to live here and bring my children up here. And I can tell you there are days that I absolutely berated myself as a human being for bringing my kids up here because they got some of it as well. That needs to be said because a lot of people will deny what my experience is and also deny that Black Lives Matter. That's what we've been dealing with for, again, hundreds of years.
I would also like to add to that, that even with well-meaning people who can say, oh, you know, I'm so sorry that that happened to you. And I'm not, I mean, specific to, you know, to white people can say, I'm so sorry that that happened to you, you know, and then they'll follow it up a lot of times with, you know, try not to take it personal because that's just how they were raised. You know, they're just bad apples. So the issue of whiteness and what it has done in the world and the way that it has harmed people in the world gets pushed to the side, just gets pushed to the side. It's not, you know, the issue of racism or white supremacy never gets talked about. It just, it's no, they're just bad people. So the core issue gets swept aside. And that's even from well-meaning people who want to be supportive in a way and say, I hear you. I hear that, you know, that you went through that stuff and it had to have been incredibly painful, you know, but those are just bad people. And then the conversation drops there, you know.
I was just gonna say, I'm sorry. So thanks for helping me to understand, Jamal and Christine, your experience in this community. And I'm just so sorry. It should not be that way. You know, and like so many have said, it's a terrible thing that you all have experienced, but also that, you know, apparently we live in a world where people don't believe that Black Lives Matter. And that is such a travesty. And so whether, I guess my statement on whether the term and the organization are synonymous, I think sometimes like it's easy for me to make them both synonymous, like the name and the organization. But I think for me, I find it easier when I'm being like more thoughtful to separate the two, because the organization has their own set of like statement of beliefs and codes and values. And then, but the statement Black Lives Matter should be universally true. And so regardless of what the organization is or what members of the organization do or don't do and what it gets lumped in with. And so I found it really helpful. I think I saw a picture of a young Black girl. I guess it was probably a year ago or so, with a sign that helped me actually understand the slogan better. It said, you know, Black Lives Matter. I know that all lives matter. It's just that for a while it seemed like some lives matter more than others. And so I just have to say Black Lives Matter too.
I just want to add, part of, I think, of what we're dealing with is different cultures within our greater culture continue to co-opt, right? Because, you know, there are so many Black Lives Matter chapters within the organization, if you really look at what is written that Black Lives Matter, the organization, stands for, it's very different than what you hear Black Lives Matter stands for in the media or from people who are writing the narrative about what Black Lives Matter stands for. And so I think there's a tremendous amount of co-opting for for agendas that are politicized agendas versus social justice agendas that have nothing to do with the organization Black Lives Matter, that are often tied to it and quite honestly become louder than the actual organization of Black Lives Matter. And then nobody knows what anything means. And and I just got to say from my gut that that is the subversive activity of white supremacy in action. Because if we can be confused about every social justice issue that involves blackness, we can summarily dismiss it. And I mean, I just will phrase this that it's not personal, Ehud, but just your use of the term a black mark. See, that is the coded, embedded garbage of white supremacy in our culture.
Yeah, I'm so happy to hear you say this, Rafe, because actually, I want to just bring in a bit of metaphysics here and say that if it were up to me, I want to address the consciousness that underlies all forms of separation and splitting that we participate in this culture. It feels like it's not popular to raise this point, but recently we've seen this spate in anti-Asian violence, and some of that happening at the hands of Black folks, Black youth, is what I'm told. And to me, it's like this will continue to happen until we address what is it in human consciousness that wants to empty what is undesirable in me onto you, and to codify that so that there are certain groups. I belong to a group and we decide subconsciously, unconsciously, and sometimes very consciously that we're going to empty ourselves of all guilt, all shame, all ugliness, and have some other group carry it for us. This is a human thing that we do. And if we looked at history, we took the long view of history, we would see it happening over and over and over and over and over again. The targets of our self-hatred change, but it's the same game over and over again. And we keep fighting as if we can solve it for the Black people, if we can solve it for the Asians, if we can solve it for the Jews, if we can solve it for women, it'll be over. No, we have to deal with what is this in us. And I think it's doable. I think a lot of helplessness comes up. Like people feel like, no, this is just how humans are. But I think we are also evolving beings. And I think we're being called to address this split in our consciousness that wants others to carry what we won't carry for ourselves. And that's the disease to me, more than any particular ism. As a Black person, I want to make contact with the part of me that is above all of it. That is not my color, not my gender, not my class, not any of it. This is a game I'm playing. This is a suit I'm wearing. And I am a splendid being who, when joined with others, can do incredible things, miracles. But we keep trying to do this work from the little, tiny, small, separated self who doesn't understand how powerful we are, doesn't understand how that we are one. Oh yeah, Aldous Huxley made a statement. And the statement, if I'm not mistaken, is No power on earth can stop an idea whose time has come. And in my humble opinion, the time that has come is for us to recognize that we are one. I want
find
us
it
to
fa-
go for,
oh, sorry.
yes, go ahead.
I find it fascinating that you quoted Aldous Huxley, great science fiction writer. It's interesting that a recurring theme in science fiction is when mankind is all united, is always against some external threat, some alien invasion, as if we always are looking for something out there that we can unite against rather than just come together for something.
Yes,
And if I may, Rafe, thank you for the correction. I completely thoughtless. It's fascinating how much it's built into our very language. Um,
yes.
so I really appreciate the correction. I was having a little bit of an emotional moment as Christine and Jamal were talking about their personal experiences. What kept on going through my head is I'm Jewish. I grew up in Israel. And of course, we grew up on a lot of stories of what happened in Europe in the 1930s, particularly in Germany. But the theme of anti-Semitism was very rife in all of Europe. Europe was ready for the Holocaust. The society was ready. And it was interesting because I was listening and I'm like, those could very well have been words said by Jews in Europe in those years. Like, why do they hate us? Jews lie. You can't trust them. It gave me shudders because we should have learned our lesson, and yet here we are.